it's better to change your environment than to even do anything else, because what happens is you eliminate all the triggers and cues that are associated with the habit that you're trying to destroy. It's like you don't even need to change cities. You can be in the same city and still change the environment. Like just moving out of your mom's basement, you know what I mean? And just going into another place with 4 guys can change the environment. 25% of soldiers who went to Vietnam tried heroin. It was like an insane statistic. And in the US, 90% of heroin addicts who go to clinics relapse. So they have a 10% long-term success rate. Tough. People are in the environment that they are addicted. They change environments and they go to a clinic. They change the environment, they change their behavior. And then they go back to the same environment and their behavior changes yet again to match the environment. And so it's like, if you want to change your actions, the easiest thing you can do is just change the environment. Because if you can do that, a lot of times, a lot of the negative things you have, you just don't get triggered. You don't get the cue for the behavior. It just gets extinguished. The stats are completely reversed from people who got addicted or did heroin in Vietnam and then came back to the US. If you want to start a habit, like for me, one of my quote famous ones is like, I want to put sunscreen on. It's like this it's like one habit that's like 80-20. So it's like, okay, I don't like it. I realize the reason I don't like it is I don't like oil on my hands. It sounds so stupid, but like that's enough punishment for me doing it that I stopped doing it. And so I had to overcome 2 things. One was that I hate the oil on my hands, and the second is that I don't remember. So I put 1 thing of sunscreen at each of my watering holes. So I get cued because I see it as soon as I sit down. So I eat lunch at the same table, I work at the same table, and on my nightstand. Those are the 3 places that I spend my time. And so I have 1 in each of the 3 places. And then the type of sunscreen I have is that I have one that's dispensed through a thing, so I don't actually have to touch it. So it's like, do I know why? It's like, if you can identify why you don't like doing something, then you can isolate, why am I being punished for this behavior, and think, okay, is there a way I can fix it? And the other is, how can I cue myself on a more regular basis by changing my environment rather than setting an alarm on my phone where if it goes off right now in the middle of a podcast, I'm not going to pull out suntan lotion, or I'd have to carry everything with me, which I would never do, right?
What's the difference between the amateur FIFA player and the pro FIFA player? The pro has put his existential connection to his content and the success of it.
And so people who are most successful, a lot of times, it's not that they necessarily have more willpower. They find other ways to reward themselves. Somebody can extend how long their time horizon is because they do gamify it. So people who don't have the skills of figuring out ways to reward themselves in the meantime can't make it the whole way. But that's like when you're doing cardio and you're like, okay, it's 5 times 5 to get out of here, right? You create micro games within the longer game to keep yourself going. And the more ways you track, the more ways you can win. And so it's a little thing that I found out. So like if you track 100 stats, then you only need 1 of them to go up so you feel like you made some progress. So that's like an easy one. And the second thing around the tracking is that I would look at like the biggest possible number. And so that's why it's like the more ways you track, the more ways you can win. And then I think that's those little micro wins can keep you going over the long game that you have to just keep playing. It's so scary, we avoid it. We avoid it. But it's like, I think the faster you can kind of build that muscle of like, I've got this hesitation. What is the real reason? Because like logically, I can do that whole thing. Cool, you have nothing to lose. You're poor. Great, 0, right? Okay, but then what is it that I do have something to lose? It's relational capital. It's status within my tiny micro community that doesn't matter, but like my perceived status. Okay, name the names. But by pulling it out from the shadows, and so I think it's getting really specific and really narrow on because people say it's society, it's other people. It's like, it's usually 1 or 2 voices. And if you can get really specific on whose voice it is, then you can name it. And then like, I think I'm a big believer in like shame only exists in the shadows, which is like, once you put it in the light, you look at it and you're like, my mom? Your mom, you sit down at Thanksgiving dinner and you haven't made money yet and you quit your job. Now what? Is that better than you spending the next 60 years hating her or resenting her for the fact that she held you back? But like that confrontation from here to here is, I think, where all the fear is, because it's embarrassing to be like, it's my mom. Your belief that you're going to be viewed as a failure by your uncle be the sole reason that you live the rest of your life below your potential and regret everything that you don't do because of Uncle Tom.
Yeah. And that's when you're starting out. People that are concerned about becoming a content creator, I'm worried about starting a podcast because what if everyone sees how shit my podcast is? It's like, dude, no one's going to see your shit podcast. It took me 3.5 years to get even an appreciable amount of people listening to this show. And it was effort 3 times a week. No one cares when you start. So you can be liberated from that as well. And it's just objection handling all the way down.
So like when we're doing a podcast, if you start, you're like, hey, I'm going to do a podcast, I'm going to post it. It's practice for me getting better for future me. Rather than like, this is the main game. It's like, no, the game is the whole thing. And this is just like, we're still in preseason.
Yeah.
Like these scores, these touchdowns don't even matter yet.